everyone for joining us for this afternoon session. This panel is a Hypertalk called Collections, Museum and the Digital. We have 3 speakers rather than the 5 originally advertised, so they're very sad they can't join us, but it will mean we'll have more time for discussion with the 3 panellists we do have. Hey, so I'm going to introduce the first speaker, Dr. Simone Gigliotti, who is a reader in Holocaust Studies at Royal Holloway, University of London. Her research interests include digital and AI regenerations of archival materials.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Kate, and thank you everyone for being here. I know it's late in the afternoon, and we'll try to get through some key topics. So this book is a digital book, Restless Archive, the Holocaust and the Cinema of the Displaced, and it was intended as a scholarly book, and I started it many years ago, or maybe 10 years ago. And it came with me as I changed my research focus, but also as it was a film-focused book, the platforms developed as such that it would accommodate a digital kind of platform as well. And it was really the suggestion of the University Press, Indiana, when it came out in, well, it was published in 2023 or released online. It's open access only, online only, no print book. They suggested that it be put on Manifold, which is their kind of digital publishing platform. Manifold is an app which a lot of university presses in the US use, journals, archives, for example, and is open access, meaning that it increases accessibility. So what I hope to do today is to take you through the kind of scholarly parameters of the book and see how the digital has really thought about integrating the digital as part of the method, but also as a kind of augmentation of the book's arguments and also as a kind of digital exhibition. So even though it's a scholarly book in conception, it's kind of not quite a scholarly book in its output, right? Obviously that you pick up, etc., right? The kind of issues that were discussed this morning about digital sustainability come into this as well. This will be upgraded and updated over time, and I will have to participate in that. So just some of the scholarly background of the book. I'll go back to the apologies, to the actual. That's it. Yeah. So the book itself, so Restless Archives is a scholarly book presented as what I've said, a kind of recuperative digital expedition, meaning that the project follows the trails of Jewish refugees and displaced persons, as you can see there in their odysseys across Europe between 1933 and 1939. It examines the visual, non-fiction archive of this movement, including filmmakers who documented their experiences and also the transnational geopolitical context and backdrops which determined their movements and itineraries. So the method of curation, it has embedded media and mapping all integrated into the platform in terms of resources and with kind of link outs to geographic software such as story maps, for example. It aims to reinforce digital technology's potential to really think about eliciting empathy for historical displacement and to empower cartographic literacy in the reader. So there's various levels of connection, and this book kind of merges my interests in history. I'm a historian by training, but interdisciplinary at that. I'm involved in geography of the Holocaust as well, and visual history and testimony. So you might say I have a bit of, attention deficit disorder in an academic sense, in that it's difficult to focus. But I try to bring that in to a kind of wide-ranging interest. So before we get into the book, I just want to give you a sense of how I've actually approached it. This book really started in 2008 as a concept, right? And the concept differed from what the actual output was. As originally I was going to write about maritime displacement, which is actually included in the book as a chapter or 2 chapters, but then I became quite focused on thinking about all of the films that we see about Jewish and Holocaust displacement, that there's been no real significant attempt at a conceptual understanding. And this book is that kind of first step. It is not comprehensive, it is not a final statement, it's a first statement, and it really attempts a kind of a spirit a gesture in this direction, where, as we know, inspired by other books about refugee displacement and migration, of which there are hundreds, if not thousands, of books and articles and memoirs, as there also are about the Holocaust, right? But in terms of a cinematic understanding and cinema as a kind of cartography of orientation, these were my kind of preoccupations. So the method was to retrieve, augment and spatialise a visible but under-conceptualised history of the multiple scales of movement, obstruction and Jewish homeseeking. So it examines films by, for and about Jewish homeseekers, meaning refugees and displaced persons. So I took this kind of term of the homeseeker as a kind of portable synonym to describe these kind of migratory movements. And of course, there are other terms that you can also use, but I found this to be a kind of efficient way to think about home seeking, but then we have homemaking, leaving, moving, etc. So in the platform, which I'll go into in a moment, there's multiple interaction pathways. You can access Restless Archive, the book on Manifold. I also created a digital discovery info site. I created film and video trailers for the book and certain chapters of the book to capture the character and the spirit of what it was intending to do. And I also designed story maps, which kind of spatialize the argument that I was making. So the outcome of what I've kind of talking about is this idea of what I've said is responsive resolution to history. So how do we use the technology, the digital, to really zone in and scale out, to zoom in and zoom out on multiple scales of movement and routes of movement as well. And it returns the user and the reader. They occupy a hybrid space of being interacting with the material, the user, the reader, to the geography of displacement and the transit filmmaking map. Right, so my intention was to really think about the kind of, I didn't really want to examine fiction film because the fiction all starts from fact in the way that what we have is the fiction archive. So I just want to go into the platform a bit here. Okay. So this is what you're seeing on the screen now. This is published, as I said, by Indiana, but it's part of their Open Indiana projects where they have many books that are published in this way. But this was arguably the first book to really test Manifold's capacity to represent in spatial, visual terms as well. So when you kind of go down, I'll go down in a minute. So this is like the abstract that you would read on the back of the book. I created the video trailer, which you can link in the information site, and I put up all of the upcoming talks and events. So it's a kind of a trailer platform as well. So what you see there is the kind of the platform, and the university, the press said, here is the platform. We will upload the text view, the Word documents, but the rest is up to you. In fact, that's what I preferred, to go and curate the platform as I wanted it to be seen, with its kind of branding and visuals. And so, let me just increase those a bit so you can see. I've given a kind of how to interact with the platform, with the book, and then the book chapters as well, the tagging, the home seeker, and the cinema of the display. So when you click on this, you'll see a regular kind of text. There's no page numbers in this book. It's a DOI for the chapter, and you start off with the image, and this is inserting the people in the landscape of where they were in this historical movement in post-war Austria. And so I start off in the Bricka, the movement of Jewish refugees, or the so-called illegal movement of Jewish refugees. And I start off with this moment and I work back. So all of the footnotes are there and integrated. You can also change, the look of it if you want to go darker on the screen, etc. Right, so there's various customizations. You can also make it narrower. You can also have annotations for teaching and create groups. If you log into the platform, because it's open access, you can have groups working on certain chapters. So it is a very good teaching resource as well. So that's the kind of what it looks like in the basic sense. And then once we go down into the actual topics, the way the book is structured as if a movement and a migration. and this containment. So part one looks at dispersions, which is about Jews in the 1930s and the global migrations. So it starts off global, and then it goes back to Europe, and then it goes regional. Right? So it's a kind of shifting scales. We have the zones of liberation and reconfinement in that early post-war period, chapters on children and displaced children living outdoors and the outdoor environment as places of challenge. Children needed to be contained and with families. So this chapter examines various films from Jewish and Zionist organizations about children's displacement. And then I look into the post-war period of waiting zones, of displaced persons camps, fundraising. There's quite a lot on this, so we can kind of go into the project. Just reduce this somewhat. So we can go in there, and then some of the films you can embed the images, but also the fundraising posters, so the way that survivors were kind of appropriated, and this is widespread, there's been books, many books around this as well, in fundraising appeals, but I examine certain films that really look at this, and the source base is kind of Anglo-American, but with some German and Italian material and places as well. And so one of the kind of other chapters, how am I going, Kate, for 10 minutes?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, I'm rushing through this. So the idea of the kind of the films that I'm looking at, it was not just films made by institutions, Jewish aid organizations, news companies, for example. It was also films made by the DPs themselves, what we might call today home movies, but we might call documents in DP camps. So this one looks at, for example, the films made by displaced persons in Germany and Italy, and it talks really about what transit means in filmmaking, but as a filmmaking is a side of agency and reclamation, but also defining themselves beyond the kind of the post-Stettel kind of world. So there's a kind of internal debate there about archive images and how they're kind of appropriated and how scholars see them. So the chapters kind of go into this kind of content and take the reader on a journey. And what they also do, you'll see, I've gone back too far here. Okay, go back to where it says archive. So what I've done, I did video, but I won't show this one. No, I'll show another one, not this one. So all of our chapters here, but in this platform, you can see down the bottom all of the resources. So most chapters have everything that I've hyperlinked in the book itself has to have its own story collection. So you click on there and then you'll see all of the items. So close to 100 resources in this platform as well. And so kind of I have to check regularly if the URLs are still current, available, etc. Because then you have to relink them and find the other material. One of the other things with this book is it cost quite a lot of money for the archival use of the photos and the film. So several £1,000s in terms of getting footage, making short excerpts from some of the footage that was accessed in the archives. So things like all of the story maps that I didn't embed these in this platform because they were too large. Again, they're their own kind of exhibition. And the platform can only take so much, and this would, I think, really be a problem for people with limited bandwidth, and this would really slow down the access. So I've externalized these as well. So one of my chapters, for example, looks at the Promised Sea, and this is about people going to from Germany, Austria, and getting to Italian ports mainly to get boats to Palestine on the so-called final step of the illegals route. So what I did with this, in each story map, just enlarge this for you. So I called them geolocators, where I designed the routes of the movement, the ports of departure of these ships, and also the filmography of the I called it the flotilla of Jewish resistance. of getting to Palestine with this obstruction. And then it looked at, as I said, it's not exhaustive, it's really a suggestive kind of iteration. So the images of the floating concentration camp really, obviously it looks at Exodus, but there are many other ships that predated and followed this as well. So I included the departure ports for the 66 voyages that came from Europe to Palestine, and I located them from this database, the Pallium database, and then this is all referenced in the book as well, some timeline there, so the overland transit locations, and then we can go down this filmography, and then you can go across. These are the kind of newsreels that we can kind of watch in the site as well, and so when you read the text, you can watch the films at the same time, or go to the other platform. Yeah?
15 on the dot then.
That's it?
Well, if you want it to be, we have a few extra minutes.
Yes.
Yeah?
15, that's fine. So anyway, I'm very happy to take questions. There's much more in there as well. Thank you.
Great, thanks. So we'll have all presentations and then we'll do a roundtable type Q&A at the end. So thank you, Simone. So next up we have Kinga Bloch, who is a teaching fellow at the School of History at Queen Mary. In her recent position as Deputy Director of the Leobeck Institute London 2019 to 2024, she's been involved in the creation of online projects such as snapshots of the German Jewish history and culture and the award-winning Library of Lost Books, which we have on display in the exhibition hall in Bramber House if you haven't seen it yet. She also created physical exhibitions about these projects, as we know. Her publications include several articles on television history.
Well, yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, well, first of all, thank you very much for having me here, and thank you for coming here to listen at this moment in the conference where we're all a bit tired, but I promise I'll be brief and colourful. So we have a bit of a short insight into the Library of Lost Books. So I want to talk about the missing link today. So I want to talk about one part of our project, citizen scientists and the global search for the Library of Lost Books, because I have to have a confession to make. We are a digital project. Of course, we've got an online exhibition, but we're very much hybrid and want people to do things in the physical world inspired by our presence on our website, but also on Instagram. So I would like to explain first what the Library of Lost Books is, where we're now, and I want to explain how we're locating lost books, looking at citizen science and provenance research, and how we're trying to create a digital map as a memorial to a Nazi-looted library, the Library of the Higher Institute for Jewish Studies, or in German, the Hochschule für die Wissenschaft des Judentums, that existed between 1872 and 1942 when it was forcibly closed by the Nazis. And at the heart of this digital monument and this digital storytelling lies the library of said institution that consisted of 60,000 works in Jewish studies that were stolen and dispersed after 1945. I want to talk also a little bit about a concept that we've developed called Search Days and how we're fostering our presence in social media. So our quest is really to commemorate a German Jewish institution, and to do so not only from its destruction, but illustrating the life and the community, the individuals who were at the Higher Institute, such as, for example, Leo Beck, whom everybody is familiar with, but also Franz Kafka, who tended to hang out in the reading room and have his thoughts about people there, and also this whole kind of focus of Jewish studies and the way it tried to take up its own space in academia to tell Jewish history from a Jewish perspective and not from the predominantly Protestant one that was, of course, a very distorted view. Our global search for a Jewish studies library looted by the Nazis includes a scientific approach as well, so we're really genuinely trying to raise academic data that can be used in researching the library with the help of citizen scientists, because as you can imagine, 60,000 volumes that disappeared more or less after 1945 are very hard to track down, especially when some of them, for example, ended up at the Offenbach Archival Depot and were sent to different Jewish organizations, and this path or this mapping is not necessarily recorded. So we have to have friends in the United States and Britain and Israel and Germany, in the Czech Republic, literally anywhere you could possibly imagine, to help us with this quest that one single provenance researcher could not possibly face. And we're using the book as a witness, but also as an educational device, so explaining to young people that a book is more than the object itself, that it can contain layers of stories, layers of biographical information that you can unravel looking at different items that are in the books. So this is really the star of the show when it comes to books from the Hochschule für die Wissenschaft des Judentums, from the Higher Institute for Jewish Studies. We have got, of course, quite obviously library stamps that were attached by librarians, and you can see them here. I've kind of very modestly circled them in one of our signature colors, just slapping it in. But there's also stamps that tell you where a book came from. For example, here is a dedication by Rabbi Max Eschelbacher from Düsseldorf, who sent a copy commemorating the 25th anniversary of his synagogue to Berlin, because he himself was an alumni of the Higher Institute and was aware that they might be interested in archiving this history of the Düsseldorf Jewish community at their library. The stamps also tell you something about the history of the Hochschule itself, because it moved quite a few times, so there are different stamps with different addresses. Interestingly, we had citizen scientists who told us about stamps we were completely unaware of, which is always very exciting, particularly for them, because they're like, you're the experts, but we found that stamp and you have no idea. And they quite enjoy rubbing it in. So it's quite nice to get an email like that. But also something that you can see at the top, now I have to think, left corner, that's called a book tale. So the Hochschule had the first female librarian to ever lead an academic library that we're aware of, and her name was Jenny Wilde. We didn't come up with that name, so it would have been nice to make it up, but she was generally called Jenny Wild, and she was quite an inventive librarian and very kind of aware of the complexity of organizing books, and she invented these book tales because many of her books were very slim volumes. So she would have a piece of paper poking up with a signature, and she could flick through them and pull them out. And very often when we find a book from the Hochschule, they're torn off because people don't quite understand what it means. And sometimes we only have a bit of glue residue that tells us that the book is from the Higher Institute. So you can imagine whenever we talk to young people and explain to them, this is how you identify a book, they get really excited about the nuances and the physicality of the object and the physicality of traces that point to everyday life. So our project, as I said, is, as I did open with my confession, is a project that has very many different layers. At the very heart of it is the online exhibition, www.libraryoflostbooks.com, that has the story of the Higher Institute in 3 chapters, starting with the story before 1933, with the assault by the Nazis, and then, of course, the afterlife of the library that was dispersed, and part of it was also rescued in a very exciting mission that I'm not going to disclose here. You can read it on the website. I'm just trying to get you there. It's highly manipulative in the afternoon. And we have, of course, raising research data through the search days that we host at different libraries, at different organizations that are happy to work with us. We have got physical exhibitions in places where there's an audience like you who might be interested in working with us, but predominantly at libraries and archives where books from the Higher Institute have emerged. We just launched one today, so this is my second talk about the event in Essen at the old synagogue that also will probably host some search days for us. The Instagram channel, Have You Seen This Book, informs around the project, so it's not only focused on the Hochschule, but other aspects of German Jewish history and culture. And the map and the database, which you can see here at the bottom, really maps out where books have surfaced. So this, you can really see the work of people on the ground searching for the books. So we're creating not an archive of scans, but we're mapping out the locations of the book today so scholars know where they went and how they traveled. As you can see here, our website is a scrollytelling concept that is implemented also with a voiceover by really wonderful actors who turned it into an audiobook as well. Some of the elements move when you scroll through it, We've got a really nice feature film, and if I finish on time, I can show you our take on find books, write history. It's actually quite nice. And we've got a submission form. So whenever we work with a school class or with a group of volunteers, when they find a book, they can take a picture of it, of the markers. So we need to see the provenance markers, upload it onto the website with the biographical information or bibliographical information about the book. And then our team of researchers reviews all of the submissions. So it's still very much a hands-on approach, because sometimes people, especially when you look at German books and German stamps in a foreign language environment, every so often someone sees a stamp and gets really happy and carried away, and then it's from, you know, the Berlin synagogue community and not from the Hochschule. I mean, it's still an interesting find for us, and we're happy to share with you the community of provenance researchers about it. But it's not a Hochschule book. So this is something that we're really facing in terms of the challenges. So we went live in November 2023, which was a very challenging time for us shortly after the 7th of October. And initially we wanted to have like a bucket book challenge concept on TikTok, but of course after the 7th of October we decided against that, because it A, felt in a way inappropriate to us, and B, we didn't want to expose one of our young colleagues to the issues that emerged on that particular platform whenever you try to convey a story about Jewish history. We have now 5 exhibitions, well, more than 5 exhibitions, but exhibitions in 5 different countries that have launched through the past year. So in San Diego, in Berlin, Heidelberg, London at the Wiener Holocaust Library, and coming up at the Leo Baeck College. We've got this little pop-up exhibition here. Thank you, Landecker Foundation, for having us. And the search days that we've done so far in collaboration with organizations all over the world amount to 23, and next Tuesday it's going to be 24, and then in January it's going to be certainly more than 27, because we're also doing one here. And we have over 20,000 followers on Instagram, and over 45,000 people have actually visited the website and read our story. And we have found books, 4,865, which is, you know, almost as much as we promised the IVZ. We thought we would find 5,000, but we still have a bit of time to keep going, and maybe next week the number will look completely different, so fingers crossed. The search days are a very interesting thing to witness, especially when you create a storyline online, when you convey the history of an institution, and when you try to motivate people and suddenly you're standing in a room and they're actually doing what you want them to do, and they're doing it with enthusiasm. That is quite a moving thing. So I've run about 10 of those events, and it's really nice to see how people actually get excited about this object book when they start, you know, turning the pages, when they find markers. And every so often, young students who we assumed might be not so very interested in the book as an object really work very quickly and have this competitive moment. Oh, I found 5 stamps, and have you logged them? And then our website crashes, and I'm like, oh no, because it's just not made for 5,000 pictures coming up. But what I've also realized, it's a community building thing. So people start talking about the individual item. They really go down the rabbit hole to research. In that case here, we had one book by the Prussian Craftsmen and Agricultural Workers Association for Jews in Prussia. And people got really excited about that title and the visuals, and they spent about an hour just looking at that. And I'm like, you're supposed to catalog books anyway. But this is a very nice thing, because there are groups that are actually evolving based upon our online offer and continuously working with the concept. Many of our friends at archives and libraries have started doing this on a regular basis as an outreach concept, using our website as a case in point, and then talking about other provenance markers as well. So this is a really nice thing about the methodology that we've developed. Our main challenges, and I'm not going to say it was an easy ride the last year, is to find partners. That's quite laborsome on our end, to find institutions that want to work with us, to organize a search day. We've developed educational materials for teachers and for librarians that they can use. And the grassroots recruitment, we just have to be quite blunt about that, did not work, because we simply couldn't create momentum on platforms like TikTok to join us. But there are really tremendous chances in the project. We've got different formats of these search days. We've got different levels of engagement with the story that we've created around the Higher Institute, and the concept is very adaptable, working with citizen science. with young people or old people or literally anyone who wants to participate. We've got a variety of learnings as well, and the most important thing from my perspective is that people really understand when they read the story on the website that we're talking about a community in its own right, and they don't read it from its end. They really kind of give them space to be something that was interesting in itself, and not only from the point of view that it was destroyed by the Nazis. And in a way, we just continue the history of the Hochschule by making people care about it and engage with it, and by trying to recreate part of its existence through that map. So it's actually something that's quite enjoyable, and I think, do I still have 2.5 minutes?
You do, it's amazing.
That's wonderful. Yeah, so I just would like to show you, not the website, because I trust you can, oh no. I would like to show you our motivational video that we have on the website. Not that one.
Can you hear it?
No, Paul, not now. But we've worked with this wonderful design agency that some of you may have seen in several places here with Navos Create. And they have made this wonderful film for us. There you go.
Recovering treasures while standing up to the Nazis, all in your spare time. Does that sound like a hobby for you? Congrats, and please note, you don't need a fancy hat. You can leave the machete at home. The only thing required is a razor-sharp mind, and maybe a weakness for beautiful books. That's right, books. That's what the Nazis were after. From 1938 onwards, they systematically looted Jewish libraries, both public and private. It's hard to believe, but true, that they did this to set up their own library. Of course, only they were allowed to use this source material for their so-called research. The findings were unsurprising. In other words, thoroughly anti-Semitic. But as you will recall, they lost the war, and the looted books were scattered all over the world. Despite extensive search efforts, not all of them have yet been found. And that's where you come in. Together, we'll go on a hunt for books from the Higher Institute for Jewish Studies in Berlin, and we aim to find as many as possible. We'll provide you with everything you need to start searching for lost treasures in your neighborhood. Follow the leads, keep an eye out for clues, and share your findings with us. What are you waiting for? Let's write history. Together, we'll fill the library of lost books.
So please do, grab your notebook. There's an instruction in there. There's plenty in the exhibition room, and it would be lovely to hear your thoughts about the project and any questions. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, and last but not least, we have Marco Streefkerk is an information manager with a broad range of experience in digital heritage. He manages the recently published Anne Frank knowledge base and other collection databases.
Thank you very much. I'm very pleased to see, well, not all the chairs filled, but a decent number of people. So thank you very much for your endurance. I would add on to the little biography. It's my personal mission. I try to fulfill it not only as an information manager at the Frank House, but also as an independent consultant for various museums, archives and libraries. And I'm also an active member of the first pan-European political party called Volt. So I'm active on different levels. This session is about collections, museums and the digital. I will focus on the digital. So I really ask some patience for you because I don't have a nice movie footage, not even very many pictures. It's just a rather conceptual talk, but I think over an important issue, and that is the digital, one of the topics of this conference. And in 15 minutes, I would like to share with you my view on global transitions and their impact on memory institutions like the Anne Frank House. And I hope my experience kind of resonates somewhere with you, because we are all, after all, we are all in the same business, so to say. I would like to start off with a disclaimer. That I'm not an expert in Holocaust history or in the Second World War. Many of my colleagues are, so if you want to hear more about that, go to them. My background is in history, but in my career I shifted my focus on the digital domain. So the story I want to share with you today is not limited, I think, to Holocaust commemoration, but I believe it's deeply relevant to all institutions engaged in memory work. We are living in a period of profound and accelerating transitions, socially, culturally, and technological. Transitions, of course, are not new. It's just that the speed and the complexity nowadays is huge and accelerating also. In my opinion, the digital transformation is both a driver of these changes as well as a product of them. And that makes the digital transformation something special. More and more we live our life online. Increasingly also interaction takes place online in digital spaces, and not just between peoples, but also more and more between humans and machines. Now, I do strongly believe in heritage and culture, and I think they should be, they must have a meaningful place in this digital world. And yet, as professionals and institutions, we still have a long road ahead if we want to be seen and respected as true stakeholders of shaping the digital world. Being digital is, in my opinion, not just doing what we've always done, but with help of digital tools. But we have to do better than that. I think that the core challenge lies in reinventing our core values as memory institutions, values that we have developed over decades, like trustworthiness, historical awareness, identity, creativity, perspectivity, connection, dialogue, to name a few. And it's now the challenge to reinvent these values in the digital environment in order to be recognized as custodians of them, as we like to be. Right now, from my perspective, those designing the digital future, governments, platforms, developers, they rarely consider culture and even education as important. The public sphere, as I've known it, is increasingly dominated by commercial interest. Big tech sets the rules. So what does it take from us, professionals and institutions, to act meaningful in the digital world? It's not so different from what is required to run any successful future-oriented organization, I think. But it does demand a few characteristics that may not feel natural in the cultural heritage world. Things like standardization, evaluation, long-term planning, collaboration, said before in the keynote, and new skills, especially my job, information management. Because in the digital world, I don't have to remember you, everything is information. The objects in our collections, the outputs of our research, they all have been carrying meaning for also in the physical form, but now they are digitized or more and more also born digital, they are all similar in the sense that they are all structured data, bits and bytes. That changes how we can make use of them. We can endlessly duplicate them, we can remix them, we can connect them, we can share them globally, and that brings great opportunities, but also responsibilities. After all, we must protect the trustworthiness of the information we manage. In a world of deepfakes, misinformation and shifting narratives, that is not a small task. And that's why information management, thoughtful, disciplined, value-based, is central to the role of heritage institutions in the digital age. I've said it here, try to illustrate it, and several components that, in my view, are important in my day-to-day practice as information manager are on a require daily attention. Our collections are no longer just objects of memory. They are digital actors in a contested public space. If we want them and us to matter in that space, we must be strategic, visibly and collaboratively. We must make our values usable in the language of the digital world to remain of value. So that is my plea why I think digital transformation for museums like Anne Frank House is important. And like I said, I've listed some components, and if time allows me,
Oh, you've got.
yeah,
You've got 9 minutes.
I would like. I mean, I don't have time to cover them all. That would take too long. I'm in between you and the drinks, as they say. So I would like someone from the audience to pick a topic they want to hear more about. Or if they want to go straight to the drinks, then that's also fine by me.
I would like to hear about the online collection.
Yes.
Control.
Okay, then I'll move also a little bit to the next slide, which gives some visual impression of what the resource we offer as an Anne Frank House. And it's have been good practice for heritage institutions to open up their collections in the digital form. I mean, we've been doing that for decades already, with as little thresholds as possible. Given the fact that the collections of the Anne Frank House, like most of us in the room, I think, are relatively recent, this means we have to face copyright issues, preserving privacy and reconstructing provenance, which is not always easy, as we've heard from the previous speaker. We are a private organization, as basically all museums in the Netherlands are. And on top of that, we require little or no government funding. But even then, we fully committed to conform to the Dutch national strategy on digital heritage, which we put on paper about 10 years ago. And it provides a unique governance model with a set of guidelines built over years of experimenting and collaborative innovation. The standards we are using as part of these guidelines are persistent identification, something to prevent broken links and also a key to sharing data. Use of shared terminology. I mean, we have some thesaurus and other hierarchies that we share and that we can easily adopt in our collection management system, for instance. IIIF, the standard for exchanging digital assets, which is important standard emerging, and linked open data. That's the basic way of providing access to collections. Further technical collections and innovations are even guided by a reference architecture, and now it's becoming quite technically. And the people who are, the organizations that work together, they also try to involve not only the supply of these resources, like the memory organizations, but also software providers, platforms, and service providers. So in that sense, we try to build up not only presentations offering of individual organizations, but you can make thematic, you can make based on materials, combinations of services. So that is what collection information I wanted to share and I'm busy with. Okay. Anyone else?
Digital strategy.
Digital strategy, yeah. Quite rightly. Because one of the core values of memory institutions is also that we cherish the importance of selection. So in order to get control over our digital information and to remain in control, because we are producing new digital information on a large scale every day, we need to make selections. What are we going to preserve? How do we do that, and for how long? Because not everything has to remain for eternity. Even if it don't, it's very hard to do so. So this requires focus, policy. At the Anne Frank House, we agreed on a digital strategy, which is quite simple, but it gives us directions in the short term about how we can use technology to archive our mission, and in the long term, how this mission will evolve given the changed circumstances with a world in transition. Because that's also important that you regularly evaluate the if your strategy is still relevant. In the real world, I think the Anne Frank House has quite a good reputation. I mean, we are what you might call an international global brand, and the book diary is among the most read books ever. Millions of people want to visit the museum, and many organizations want to associate with us. And youngsters are still inspired by the girl that perished at the age of 14. And in line with what I said before about the importance of digital transformation, it's my mission to transform ourselves into the digital, and extending the reputation of the Anne Frank House also in the online world. And we believe that the basic way to do so is to share our knowledge and our information as open as possible, so others can contribute to a universal goal of doing good. So that is basically our digital strategy. And with that, I think...
You've got 1 minute 20 if you want to do one more.
One minute? No, let me finish by saying a few words in conclusion. I think the impact that we try to achieve, it was challenged this afternoon, and it was very confronting, but also very important, I think. And I hope I made it clear that in order to be a digital change maker, I am trying to help the Anne Frank House to transform into the digital. And I've highlighted some aspects of what I think are crucial ingredients to remain of value. And all these aspects, I have no doubt, must have some connections to your work in your circumstances. And I'm happy to later on in the discussion to hear your reflections and take other questions.
Thank you very much. Okay, so I'll now invite all the panellists back to the front, and we can maybe get some chairs. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, sorry. I was wondering, Marco, when you were talking about the copyright issue, and maybe that's also a question to Simone, something that's coming up again and again. When we put things online, it's kind of this transnational presence of content. And when you mentioned the Dutch regulations about digital procedures, I just kept thinking, in the United States you have this really kind of easy way out with a fair use paragraph. but we don't have that in Europe, and in Europe it's so diverse.
That's right.
That's a challenge that we're facing, right? But how can we have like a best practice for ourselves whenever we embark on a new project?
In my daily work, I heavily relate to the work that's been done by Europeana. They are a one-time shop for everything that's happening online. And the experience of heritage institutions. We also, I think we have to make a hard lobby to policy makers in Europe. I mean, this is going a little bit in the good direction, but it's still hard work. We have, of course, the data mining exception, which now, a few years later, also is a little bit turning against us because of the AI harvesting. And it all starts with the thing you can do in your institution yourself is good registration. I mean, I'm now in the Anne Frank House for 5 years. I started with a big project to do retrospective registration, and almost every object is an exception to the rules we apply. So, and once we at least say, well, this is a group of objects that have similar circumstances, then we can, because it's not only a legal judgment, but it is also a question of risk management. So then we can go to the board and say, well, this is the situation. Are you willing to take the risk with all the restrictions, of course, to put it online because of it's in line with our digital strategy. And the other thing, I'm doing a project with Wikimedia at the moment, so that will be an interesting new experience because the content is then presented or put online through the United States. They have also a legal arrangement that if somebody has obligations or complaints, then you have time to take it off. So we'll see how this evolves. Yeah. If that's answer to your question.
Yes.
I also have a question for that. It's for you, Kinga. So, how much or how little did the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum's History Unfolded project kind of inspire you at all for kind of the citizen science approach? I know that was quite a David Clavin and his team. Yeah.
No.
Interesting.
Not at all.
Okay.
We were looking at the Arisen archives. That was the thing that really kind of made the whole thing interesting for us. And we found Bettina Farag in Jerusalem, who stumbled across a stamp, so a colleague highlighted it to her and said, look, this is from the Hochschule, and she's a provenance researcher. So she had this idea, and then we just sat down and thought, how can we implement this? How can we actually make provenance research for a project of a library? We know where it came from, but we know nothing about its whereabouts at the moment. And one thing that was also an important factor in choosing this particular institution is that it has no successor. So that was quite important, that we don't have any issue with anyone finding a book and then having to restitute it. That would have been, nobody would have wanted to work with us on a question like that, because it's very complex in libraries, and also in museum collections, this whole debate about restitution and provenance is quite big at the moment. But no, that project was not influential at all, which is quite interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting. I see some parallels, but I think with theirs, it was kind of done in the public space. So I think your distinct methodology, they do bring people together, but a lot of it was sort of crowdsourced at home and uploading newspapers into their database. But what I like most about those projects and those parallels is actually that you're asking them to have something, which is a picture or whatever that is, that's their file, and then they submit it to you. It's almost peer reviewed.
Yes.
In the way that it's, so you create an experience out of that for everyone that is almost going through that.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
So we really genuinely, there's a task force also at the Association of Jewish Libraries, that engages with Nazi looted libraries. So they kind of started a few years ago, and yeah, so Bettina really kind of pushed the boat out.
Yeah.
And yeah, and we genuinely, Hours in Archives, lockdown,
Yeah.
online exhibition, this is how the train of thought kind of started for us.
That's great. Great. Thank you.
You said before that you're also looking for partner institutions. I was kind of interested in what institutions are you looking for, what sort of the age group that you're looking for, because you said that you do the search days with students,
Pupil
Is that
students.
high school students, or so what's also the age group that you look for?
So we're starting with 14, 15-year-olds, and we've worked with different groups. So in Germany, the first search day we did was the day after the launch event in November 2023, and that was about 15-year-olds, and I was actually quite surprised. It was the first time I stepped into a classroom with it. You know, I had tested it with my students at Queen Mary, but you know, they know me the whole term, and I'm just kind of, I've tamed them the moment I throw the thing at them, and it's like, we're all nice, I drink chocolate, and I know nothing can go wrong. But to step into an environment where you don't know the teacher, you don't know the pupils, is quite challenging. And it really strongly depends whether the project works or not, how open the educators are, but also how open the archives, the libraries, the museums are. I mean, we had a wonderful day at the Victoria and Albert Museum where the head librarian of the National Art Library was really kind enough to give us a pile of 40 auction catalogues. And this was yet again, you know, so out of my comfort zone, because I went there with pupils from the German school, and they were also 16, 17, and I was thinking they'd just be bored out of their minds. If you've ever seen a Judaica auction catalogue, it's just a provenance marker. It's like, there's a stamp, there's a scribble, very, very few pictures, and I just walked in there thinking like, this is going to totally bomb. And these young people have absolutely restored my belief in mankind. They just dug through the catalogues, and I also had planted one catalogue of a book rescue auction. So there was somebody who rescued books and smuggled them out of Nazi Germany, the most valuable items. And they showed up in an auction at Sotheby's in New York, which is a whole kind of morally problematic thing. But there's stories online, you can read it on our website, just saying it again. But I smuggled that catalogue in. And I just will never forget this girl who comes to me, she's like, you should know about this. There's lots of books from the Hochschule. And I'm like, I do know. I just wanted you to, you know, have a positive moment here. And they asked for more. They were genuinely focused. They were discussing how to organize themselves. They were done rather quickly, and they felt super privileged to be allowed into that library and to touch something they had never seen before, even though it wasn't particularly exciting. So this is, you know, we heard so many times that no one will be interested in old books, but that is absolutely nonsensical. It is really something that can convey a story. It's something you can touch, and something that you can open, and you know somebody else opened it who may not be here anymore, and who's experienced something terrible, and the book is the witness. So that does work. And we're constantly looking for, you know, new libraries, new archives to engage with us and to use this outreach concept. And some institutions like Staatsbibliothek Berlin, but also the Leo Baeck College in London have really included this as a constant thing into their everyday practice and are doing it now. I'm going back on, I think, to my 5th search day at the Leo Baeck College next Tuesday. And there's a group of volunteers who are like, you know, we're doing this.
But you need some successes, right?
Yes.
What if you have a search day and nothing is found?
You know, you always find something.
Mm-hmm.
It's not necessarily a Hochschule book. But most of the books, so we have got an instruction how to select books that you want to review. Sometimes the archivists or the librarians do that, but sometimes also the students select books with their teachers, and they're then brought to the reading room. And they will always find something of interest. So in the image I showed, there was a book cover about a publication nobody would have even thought it could exist. Sometimes there's an ex libris that's interesting, sometimes there's a scribble, but the message can also be, you know, one person is looking for 60,000 books. And just the amount of books you've reviewed without finding anything just explains to you how complex the task that you're facing is. So we're trying to kind of, have also a reward system with numbers. You've checked 50 books today. You've helped us to exclude 50 books from the potential group of items. And we also have a catalogue that we reconstructed based upon lists of donations that they can, for example, use to take specific items out of the library. But the frustration is there. It's a big worry. That I think that's also something that's stopping some teachers from engaging. But when you have someone who really can explain this narrative of the process, then it does work. Yeah, does that answer?
Thank you. Yes.
Yes, sorry.
Any more questions?
I have got a question for Simone. I'm sorry, I'm just kind of being super chatty. It's kind of my post-coffee afternoon. I was interested whether you also have some mapping about which items your readers engage with and which rabbit holes they go down.
It's not. The metadata is just users on the site.
Okay.
It doesn't give you deep engagement with which chapters or which. It's just users. So it's quite general in terms of what it returns. But that would be really interesting to know. Yeah, definitely.
Have you used it with students or Holloway?
So yeah, students have used it, and it's kind of written as more of a, it's even though it's a scholarly book, it's kind of more of a kind of public history book. It's tried to scale back on the theory of scholarship in a way. But yeah, they engage with it and look at the various, there's like films integrated, there's deep mapping, there's so many different layers to what's in that book. So yeah.
Everyone like
The end of the
Oh, the end of the conference. So sad.
We had still one meeting.
drink. Yeah, there will be drinks in the tent.
But only in half an hour.
Giving you time to ruminate if there are any more questions. Otherwise, we
Yeah, I have a question to the films. I mean, you said that you can watch them online fully or just on parts, and how to get access to them or to the whole talk at all?
Yeah, so it's open access, so you just go to the website and it's all there, integrated website. And so the films that I chose, there's only one, they're all kind of, they vary up to 20 minutes, they're kind of short films, but it's all accessible within the platform that you click on it and you can view it. And then, it's all, that was the purpose, to integrate everything. So you don't have to go and find it. And it's all integrated through, it was from the Steven Spielberg Cinematheque, from the US Holocaust Museum, National Centre for Jewish Film. So all of the formats they were in, if they weren't already in Vimeo or YouTube, I got the original and converted them and uploaded them to the platform as well. So there was a bit of editing involved in that too.
Was there anything you didn't put in or couldn't put in?
It's just, you could actually put in, documents. It could be fully integrated. Every document, every archive that you visit, every source, but that's too much.
I actually meant films.
Yeah. Well, there's films. It's I only put in the films that I gave extended analysis and treatment to, but I do mention many others. And it's just it's really to give an understanding of a kind of a spirit and a character for what these films represent. And then I've listed other films that people can go and watch, but I only really prioritise the ones that I wanted to write about and which really exemplify the argument.
Okay, well, maybe we continue this discussion over wine. So thank you very much, everyone, for coming. That marks, I think, the end of what's been a fabulous 3 days. So I hope you'll join us for dinner and drinks in the tent. And thanks to the panellists.
Thank you.
Thank you.